Hello, it's Claire Riley, entrepreneur. I feel really challenged today. I haven't thought of the topic. It was Lee, one of my colleagues, who thought of this topic, and I've had a lot of thinking around this, and I feel like there's a lot to say. So, how do you hire for a job that you've never done? That is a really big question. So when he gave me that topic, he gave me a few different ideas of questions as well. So these are some of the questions that he asked. So, how do you assess how good someone will be at a job you haven't done? How do you know if someone could do things that you can't do? How do you know what to ask? And how do you get it right when it's a new role? So all these are questions that I can give insight on. I'm not sure I can answer fully, because I'm not sure there is a right answer. All you can do is learn from the experiences that you've had, and hopefully you can learn from the experiences that I've had. So just a little bit of background then. So I started the company in 2013, first took on staff in 2015. I actually recruited for two roles. It was actually proofreading, and it was website admin, both of which I already did. So I did know the job. So we did that. And then going forward, when I recruited for that role again, I made changes because there were certain things that I hadn't put in place. So I'd put in place tests and different things, kind of like a proving thing, because it shouldn't just be an interview. So even though I knew the job, I still needed to develop the recruitment process on that. But there was a time, the first job that we recruited for that we had no idea about was for an illustrator. So at that time, we got a friend in who was working in design, so that he had some idea of what on earth we were getting ourselves into. One thing that I did find hard in terms of when we did hire was the timescales, how to know what was reasonable and what wasn't reasonable about what we're expecting. And that was a really difficult thing. But at that stage, the best thing to do was sort of bring in help. So we've also had to bring in customer service people. Now, Edward does have some experience in customer service, so that helps. Me, not really. So it's just a trial, really. It's just a test. I think it's important to say that you might not get it right first time. In fact, you might not get it right on the 20th time. And you just have to accept that that might be a thing. And you just sort of have to give it a go. Because I think I didn't hire till a year later than I should have done, because I was worried about getting it wrong. And then when I did, I had all these challenges that I didn't expect to have, because I thought that it would be perfect and it wasn't perfect. So really what I needed to do was just get on with it and do it. So you might not get it right, that's important to say. You should draft in help if you can, where possible, of other people who might have an idea about the role. So a recent role that we developed, that we recruited for, which was new, was a web developer. So that was difficult even to write the job spec. So obviously we looked around at other web developers and things, and we tried to think about the existing problems that we had and plan it around that, and try and plan out what they would do. And so with that kind of role, then there's qualifications, so you can make sure that they've got the right qualifications, which is helpful. The thing about that, I actually feel like it's easier to hire like a customer service manager when you've never done it, or a web developer, because the industry standard roles, like if they've got the experience, then they're going to come in kind of knowing the thing that you need to know. It's actually harder to recruit for the job that I have done, that I really know, which is proofreading and the resource creation, because it's very unique to the business and nobody really knows what it is. And that's one of the reasons why we have an assessment day. So in the morning we can test the capability and the skills, but they can also sort of experience the job and work out if it is actually for them or not. So in some senses, it is easier to recruit for a job that you haven't done than a job you have done, but that's because ours is unique to the company. So just another thing. So we are actually looking now for a sales representative. We're looking at building a sales team. And that is difficult because none of us have really got that much sales experience, but our customer service manager does have more knowledge in that, so obviously we will pull that in where we can. And then because we don't have much knowledge, we went to another company yesterday and talked to them about their sales and tried to learn what we could from them to help us get the right person in the role. So that's another thing that you can try. I think it's important to remember that when I first hired, I thought that was the be all and end all, and that was it. It was finished. That once they're in, and that's how it had to be. But I've learnt over time that it doesn't have to be the final solution. So it might be that you need to change the role because it doesn't fit the company, and that's okay. It might be that that person doesn't fit there, but the company could sustain them somewhere else or has a need for it, and you could move them somewhere else. It could be that they decide that they don't want to do that anymore and they decide to move on. There are different ways, and it's not the final solution. So if it doesn't go the way you thought it would, then that's okay, basically. But the thing to remember is if you don't get exactly what you need, if they're committed, then it'll work out just fine and you'll find a way forward because they're in a position with that experience to find out the things that you need them to know. They're in a better position to sort of find that out or learn that than you are, or network with the right people. So how do you know what to ask then? It's tricky, really, really tricky, but we actually came up with a list of things that were not happening and that we wanted to happen, and then we asked the questions around that. So you might be thinking that's a really temporary thing and maybe that's not a good idea, but actually what you're going to get is results that you want in the first 12 months, and then from there, between you, you'll be able to work out what the role looks like after that, because the company hopefully has grown by them because they've been in that role. So I think it's just important to remember that roles do change, things do change. It's about being honest as well. If it is a new role, saying that it's a new role and that things are going to change. Even the resource creation managers now and the proofreading manager that I've got, they are quite new roles, and the role before that was very new, and I've always been honest with them, like, this is what it is now, but I can't promise it will be this in 6 months' time. We're just going to have to go with what works for the company, and we're going to have to work out what doesn't work and change things as we go along. And I think it's about being upfront and honest that way as well. But lastly, I think it's on gut feeling. You know, if you're in an interview, then trust your gut. And you know what, we've had times where we haven't. Sometimes there's been one of us who has thought, no, and we've gone with it, and it's not been right. There have been times when we've all thought it would be good and it hasn't worked out. But I think more and more I'm realising that gut feeling is probably the most important thing that you could rely on, really. So that was a lot to talk about. That was a lot of information to get out there. So how to hire people for a job you've never done. Just collaborate where possible. Drafting help, look at other businesses. Remember that the solution you're coming up with now doesn't have to be the solution forever, that you can change things, and you just have to give it a go. And sometimes it won't work out, but it's all a test, and you just have to try it. And so, Lee, I hope I've answered your questions. I'm going to go now.